Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, I have an actual, absolute number one favorite card from Theros Beyond Death.
I'm listening.
Do you have any guesses as to my favorite card from Theros Beyond Death?
Now, you're talking favorite to win with, or favorite as in you just like it. It's your style. That's just what you want.
I think it's probably a pretty good card. And it's not like the best card, right? It's not Heliod. But it's a very good card, I think. And it's very on brand for a version of me. And I think it's worth talking about.
Well, in that case, I hope it's not Omen of the Forge.
No.
Because that's a burn spell. I don't know. I don't even know, man.
Omen of the Forge?
Dude, I don't know.
Is that the overcosted shock enchantment?
With upside.
Ish.
It's upside adjacent.
You paid a deep deck building cost to get that card in your deck.
So what's your card, man?
My card is Dream Trawler.
Dream Trawler?
Dream Trawler.
Tell me about Dream Trawler.
Dream Trawler is 2 WWUU, so 6 total mana for your creature Sphinx. It is a 3/5 flyer with lifelink, but it has some additional text. Whenever you draw a card, Dream Trawler gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And whenever Dream Trawler attacks, draw a card. But that's not all. It has the additional text, discard a card, Dream Trawler gains hexproof until end of turn, tap it.
So, what are your thoughts? I mean, like, it seems incredible. But,
So, yeah.
What is it you want to do? You just stick it in the same blue-white deck there always is, right?
Well, I was just thinking, Baneslayer Angel costs 5 for basically a 5/5 flying lifelink, or the whatever Baneslayer Angel reprints they've had in recent years. Dream Trawler costs 6. It costs 1 more for a 3/5 flying lifelink. On offense, it's typically going to be 5 power or greater, right? Because you draw a card for your turn, and then when it's actually attacking, you get an additional +1/+0, so it's about 5/5. If you don't, do something like cast a glimpse or something like that during combat, or prior to combat, or activate it's a fairy or something like that. So it's potentially even greater power. But really, the entire thing for me for this card is that the criticism of Baneslayer Angel, even when folks like Pro Tour Hall of Famer, 2-time Pro Tour champion Brian Kibble were walking around saying it was the greatest large creature of all time, was that it died to Doomblade. Dream Trawler is finally, the Baneslayer Angel that does not, generally speaking, die to Doomblade.
Yeah, I mean, this card looks fantastic. 1 mana more, so compared to Baneslayer Angel, the lack of first strike and the being only a 3/5 on defense, no question, that's a definite hit. Costing 1 mana more, no question, definite hit. But the ability for this to draw you a card when it attacks, to me, when you draw a card, it attacks, and then also the pumpable fire breathing of sorts scaling off of your card draw, that's worth more to me than the +2/+0 first strike and protection from dragons and demons. But then there's the question of the costing a mana more versus the hexproof, and I think that the hexproof ability is worth it. This card looks incredible to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about all the things that a control deck that wanted to play creatures might wanted to try to exploit over time, right? So you have cards like Ophidian, right? So that's an iconic control creature, or Thieving Magpie. Dream Trawler, once it's in play and attacking, is a better Ophidian than either Thieving Magpie or Ophidian, right? It's actually better than both. It just triggers on the attack. You don't have to make a choice like with Ophidian. You don't have to damage the opponent like Thieving Magpie. It has that aspect. It has the large 5/5-ness, more or less, of a card like Sphinx of Jawar Isle or Baneslayer Angel. It has the hexproof of Sphinx of Jawar Isle. It has the lifelink of Baneslayer Angel. it says all of these things. Like, you were a Sphinx of Jawar Isle guy, right? For 6.
Sort of. I mean, I used it. I wouldn't say that I was a Sphinx of Jar Isle guy.
Yeah, I mean, like, Sphinx of Jawar Isle obviously was probably a product of its time,
It
right?
was the second best Sphinx in my deck
Well, this is a better Sphinx than that, I think, in the long run.
by a mile.
Yeah, so this
This
card is
card
just,
is incredible.
it's like everything to everyone,
Not everyone.
as long as the everyone you're talking about is just control players who need a finisher.
Yeah.
As long as you're in that universe, it it doesn't have like the bag of tricks of Morphling or the insta. It actually might have the insta kill of Psychotog, right? There might be some angle that you can play on Dream Trawler where you just end it, right? Like, imagine your opponent's at 10 or something. It's not out of the realm of possibility that you go hard with your Planeswalker activations or tidings or whatever, and you just push, push, push to get lethal damage in. Especially, I think, that this is a blue-white card that's entering standard at the same time that Teferi Time Raveler is around. So, like, the knock on this kind of control creature is that it's bad against other control decks, but blue-white decks can resolve this. It's not a big deal. And if they're both in play at the same time, you can do a lot of craziness that the opponent can't do anything about because they can't do anything during your main phase or your attack phase because it's a fairy.
Well, they can still pump this guy to give it hexproof if it comes to that.
Oh, no,
But
I'm
yeah,
saying if you have you have the Teferi and you have the Dream Trawler, right? Like,
yeah, I'm saying they could still pump the guy. Like if you have 2 of these heads up.
Yep, that's true.
Well, but you're just using one Teferi to force Dream Trawler to be safe.
Yeah, I'm just saying if you have a Teferi in play and you have a Dream Trawler in play, right? Like, you can do a lot of chaos. Like, if you just like want to spend all your mana to draw a bunch of extra cards with like a blue X spell, or use your Teferi, or use whatever kind of forecasters you've got to draw cards, like, you could just put his power high enough that it's going to kill the opponent on one attack.
Well, and something that's interesting, even if you don't have Teferi, you can hit. So if they let you swing with the Dream Trawler, first of all, if once they've let you swing, you're already a better of it by a card. But then you might be thinking of shoving all in, where you're like, oh, I don't know if I really want to invest a whole bunch of cards because if they have a removal spell. But the thing is that once they let you attack, even if you use the hexproof ability, your guy still deals damage.
Yeah, tapping it at that point doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really, really important aspect of Dream Trawler, I think. Like, this card is so Michael Flores 2005. I mean, that version is in love with Dream Trawler.
So, yeah, this card looks good. It looks like it goes in the blue-white control deck that has all the stuff you would expect it to have. And this seems like a great finisher at the top end for it.
Yeah. Would you play 4? It's non-legendary. I mean, I'm all about just
maybe.
Like,
I don't know. On the average, no.
Tap out.
Yeah, but on the average, no.
Yeah, probably not.
But it's possible. It's possible. There's been times. I think it's not the natural thing to play 4 copies of a 6-drop like this where you only need 1 to ride it. Like, the reason that you play 4 copies of Primeval Titan or Grave Titan or whatever, sometimes Inferno Titan, whatever, more often than a lot of 6s, is because of how much they're value cards. This isn't just a value card. This card is aspiring to do it all. And a lot of what it does is protect itself a variety of ways. It distributes a lot of power inefficiently, but across a lot of different axes. It gets you value, but it's not all about that you put it down, and if they kill it, you put out another one. This one, the hope is that you're going to ride the one to victory.
Oh, this is such a great Protect the Queen card, right? Because
it looks like it was designed to be the perfect Protect the Queen card.
Because it draws cards for itself, and you don't even need to use a counterspell to protect it, right? Like, any card will just protect Dream Trawler, and it draws them for you. Like, this is actually kind of a paint by numbers card if you take it too far.
I don't know. I think it's important to note, though, this is not. I know it might seem like this is all the stuff all on one card. It's like got the there's a little bit of the card draw of the Magpie or the Consecrated Sphinx, some of the Baneslayer Angels, some of the Hexproof for Morphling. This is like everything to everybody insofar as the control stuff is. But this balance, the distribution, it's actually quite brilliant here. I think this is a masterful design. I mean, I can't speak to how the rate will actually materialize in the game, but the fact that like Baneslayer Angel it's awesome when Baneslayer Angel actually attacks. And it's less fun when Baneslayer Angel is actually just all about incentive is to stay home forever. Dream Trawler is a Baneslayer Angel that has more power than Baneslayer Angel by a lot when it's on the offense, but it's still a good Baneslayer on defense. And then the fact that it has hexproof, and that hexproof means something different at different times, I think this is just a fantastic design. I think from a design standpoint, this is definitely going to be one of my top most impressed with the design of.
So, do you think Dream Trawler has life outside of Standard? Do you think it's going to see play in Modern?
Maybe. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think in small numbers it will get played in. I actually think that it's not out of the question to imagine this card showing up occasionally in Legacy.
Wow. Like in a
I don't think it'll be a
sense, like not somebody
like a one in the sideboard type thing. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever, one in their deck, and it's instead of some weird, there's times where you board in Baneslayer, and I think this card could potentially find some spot there, like a deck that the main deck just has like Jace Teferi, Narset, or Ajani or whatever, and then after sideboarding, you bring in a Dream Trawler. But I don't know. Yeah. In general, though, I think this card definitely looks like a player for Pioneer and a little bit a fringe player for Modern. I don't think it's like naturally well suited to Modern, but I think it's a powerful card.
So
and it's got purpose.
I think that it's playable in Modern for certain people, but I think that those people are probably just going to die out. The reason I say that is like I played a fair amount of Modern, and I pretty much always play red decks in Modern. And the difference between somebody siding in a Baneslayer, which I could just kill with a Fry or two burn spells, and somebody who's just going off with timely reinforcements, especially now with like the fetch land recursion that you can do with Mystic Sanctuary. Like I think like that's just so much better than a Dream Trawler in Modern, I think. Like that's just unbeatable for the decks that you want. Mm-hmm. That you like specifically the kind of decks that you want Dream Trawler for. You'd rather have fetch land recursion, I think, than specifically with timely reinforcements, but could also be with like Cryptic Command.
So what do you think of Bronzehide Lion?
The first time I saw Bronzehide Lion, I thought of you. It's one of my top 8 or 10 favorite cards also. For those rare listeners who don't know,
it doesn't matter, dude. Yeah. I played Fleecemane Lion back in the day.
Won a Pro Tour.
Bronzehide Lion is a green-white 3/3 cat. You can pay green-white to give it indestructible until end of turn. And when it dies, you return to the battlefield, and now it's an aura attached to one of your creatures, and its ability, it's an aura that just gives the creature that it's attached to the ability of green-white, the enchanted creature is indestructible this turn. So, like, this is like an outrageously exciting 2-drop, right?
Oh, I think this card is phenomenal. One of the reasons that I think it's so great is like how badly people who are like not familiar with the specific matchups are going to misprice this card. Very similar to Fleecemane Lion, right? So if you think of like the kind of the traditional breakdown of archetypes, blue-white type control decks are historically favored against green-white type, creature or Abzan decks. But the presence of Fleecemane Lion gave an inevitability to like the Abzan or the Selesnya decks, because the blue-white deck often wouldn't be able to destroy it, right? And I think that the same thing is true with Bronzehide Lion. It's this card. It's like a 3/3 for 2, which is a very good rate, right? It's very, very good rate to begin with. It has this ability, which is a little clunky but extraordinarily powerful, but it's attached to a card that's already really good. Right, so it's not like they attach this card to like this ability to like a 2/1, right? If this card was like green-white for a 2/1 and had the same ability, it'd be obviously far less exciting. But that's because the ability is like a little expensive to keep up, but it's attached to like a mediocre card. If you attach it to a 3/3 for 2, it's something. And then there's this whole other thing, right? Like The whole aura backup plan is
I think that aura is actually going to be quite good. Like, of course, 3/3 indestructible for 2 is the thing that you're in the door for, right? Like, you took the phone call for the 3/3 for 2, but I think the aura ability is going to prove to be quite good because you're going to be in spots where, think of it. Here's the way to think of it, man. How good would 3/3 that if it dies you draw a card be?
I mean, right? Like that's just.
Of course.
I mean,
So,
how good is 3/3 for 2 can't attack? That card was played in Pro Tour winning decks in the last 5 years.
so 3/3 dies draw a card would be a thing, and this one when it dies, you get your card is this 0 mana aura that makes your creature indestructible. I'm not saying that you're like, oh my god, I would just snap up playing with that card, but you're going to get a card worth of value out of that frequently. Now, there's occasionally going to be spots where it's just incredible for you, but my point is that one of the issues with Brown's Hide Lion is that you just don't always have that green-white open.
Yeah.
But the fact that you don't always have that green-white open is mitigated so much by the fact that as long as you have any other creature in play, the value you get, even if the lion dies, is actually, like, very real. Heaven forbid you get a chance to play a 3-drop or a 4-drop or whatever, where you actually are protecting something that's just like incredibly high stakes.
I think like there's going to be a lot of play patterns that mirror how black creature decks played against blue-white decks, years and years ago, like circa like 1997. Like, I remember Eric Lauer and Andrew Cuneo taught me this. They're like, if you have a Knight of Stromgold and you're playing against blue-white, you never play another threat. You win with the Knight of Stromgold. It's so difficult for them to deal with the Knight of Stromgold. If you play anything else, they're just going to wrath it. They're going to wrath 2 cards, and they were going to have to wrath the Knight of Stromgold anyway, right? So the Bronze-Hide Lion, I think, is the same thing. Like, I think that you don't generally want to advance your battlefield against control decks specifically if it means giving up the open GW, right?
But I don't. I see. I think you're going to want to put a second. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to want to just walk into a spot where you get nothing against Kaya's Wrath, but I think you're going to have a lot of incentive to be protecting, like to have Bronze-Hide Lion and another threat, because you're going to want to be in a spot where your opponent is like under pressure to try to do something like sweep the board, even though you can then make your lion indestructible and then still be continuing to hit next turn.
Yeah,
like, I think you're going to.
What do you think about having like it's turn 4, you have 4 mana open, and then you just play another 2-drop on turn 4, leaving up GW? Like, I think that's something that's
way better. Of course, I think you're going to want to do that. That's the better way to do it. I think you want to commit something else, but you want to keep the mana open against the control deck.
So yeah, I think this card. This is also one of, I'd say, my top 10 or so favorite cards in the set. I think it is. It's like I love these cards that are just like, a little less exciting, but they're just going to do so much work.
I don't know about a little less exciting, man. I think you and I get excited by different things.
Oh, I mean, I'm super excited by Bronze-Hide Lion and Dream Trawler. I think most people are excited by Heliod. That's how, or like they're excited by Palooka.
Every blue-white control player I've seen has been excited about Dream Trawler.
Yeah, I felt so unique until that sentence.
You are uniquely like everyone else. So another card I wanted to definitely touch on, the First Iroan Games.
Oh.
This is that 4-chapter saga. Tuna Green Enchantment. Chapter 1, a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Chapter 2, put 3 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. Chapter 3, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw 2 cards. Chapter 4, create a gold token.
I don't usually,
which is worth a mana.
Yeah, they don't define what it is, but I went and looked it up from.
Well, it's gold.
Yeah, the original Theros had, I think, some creatures that made gold, so it's just like a token that's just sacrificed for a mana, right? So I don't usually geek out over this kind of stuff, but the First Iroan Games might be my favorite design since Form of the Dragon. It tells such a cool little story, right? So you've got chapter 1, you just make the 1/1 human soldier. Chapter 2, the soldier gets big. Chapter 3, the soldier accomplishes something. The chapter 4, he's standing on the pedestal getting his medal. Besides which, I think
So
this is a good card.
so two issues. Two things. One, first of all, the the First Iroan Games gave out gold medals. What? Didn't it specifically say in the flavor text of some of the cards, like you can't, they didn't award gold, but they didn't award trophies or medals, or it was, so I think like it's obviously kind of a flavor fail given the world that we're in.
Oh
But
man,
that said,
I love the
obviously the
flavor.
design is, that's because you're not thinking in universe based entirely on the flavor text. That said, by the time we post this, they'll probably have some, I don't know, Maro's just going to be like, oh, guess what? Sick reveal. It's like some Sixth Sense stuff where it's like, now wait till you find out why they don't give out gold medals anymore. It was aliens or planeswalkers or whatever. So as far as this card being good, isn't this card really good?
Yeah.
Like really good?
So I mean,
So
if you just take it on its face, right? This card is like a 4/4, draw some cards, gain a lotus petal, right? Like if they don't mess with your
I don't know if
one
that's
guy.
not, well, over a lot of time, but so to start with, how good is a 1/1 draw card? For 2 mana, that's pretty fringe. Maybe you play it, but it's like right on the line. And this
I
costs 3.
I would in the abstract agree with you, except for the fact that Elvish Visionary has won so many big events in so many different formats, and so has what's that satyr, the 1/1 Wandering Satyr, is that his name?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. So,
every version of 1/1 draw a card or like get a land or something has been great for two.
okay. So, it's just, there's been a lot of times where the same cards have been legal and not played. The point is that sometimes you play, like if the card was just 1 in a green, 1/1 draw a card, that could be interesting. Uh, the the fact that you're paying 1 extra mana, it's like, okay, well, what did I pay 1 extra mana for? Well, if you have a 1/1 draw card, and then the card, and the reason I say draw a card is that now you have this enchantment in play. So this enchantment costs you 1 mana more than the cantrip guy. And here's what the enchantment does. At the beginning of your next turn, you're going to give something +3/+3, which doesn't even have to be your token. It could be any of your creatures, which is going to make it very awkward for them to use removal sometimes. And it gives you virtual haste, and it gives you the ability to power up something that has good keywords. And it's got +1/+1 counter synergies, plus human synergies or enchantment synergies or whatever, like just synergies with a lot of things. But already you're at a 4/4 that you could have spread out in a different way. You could have put the counters on a flyer or whatever, and you're not done yet because you have this enchantment in play that's going to be a divination unless your opponent can kill all of your creatures with power 4 or greater. And like the ability to spend, like, if you just had a card that was like 1 mana, 2 turns from now you're going to draw 2 cards, that card would be unreal.
Yeah.
This card, you're paying that 1 mana compared to Elvish Visionary, and then you're buying a suspend 1. I mean, it's not just Elvish Visionary though, because you're also paying for the. Anyway, the point is that you're getting your Elvish Visionary paid off the moment that you have those 3+1/+1 counters, because at that point you're already at a spot where, oh, for 2 and a green you got a 4/4, and you could have spread it out. But you have this suspend enchantment in play that next turn is threatening to draw you 2 more cards, which is just like really good. And that's to say nothing of at the end you just get the gold token, which is actually kind of nice,
I mean, I think that that's more flavor than anything else, but it's
Totally.
certainly gonna have a bearing on some games, right? Like if you think about like a real
Well,
simplest.
yeah, like if I could just point to a specific thing, think about the turn it gives it to you. if you play the First Iroan Games when you have 3 mana, Chapter 4 is going to happen and ramp you straight up to 7. So if you're just ever playing a deck that has any card that costs 7, and that's, obviously there's going to be times where you miss your land drop and you're going to be, oh man, it's great I have this gold to help play my expensive card. But if you're ever playing any card that costs 7, or if you're just trying to splash.
Yeah. I mean, I also think that it's going to have some substantial contextual value. So imagine you played this card in Pioneer, which it's one of the things that I was thinking about because Pioneer has all these Llanowar Elves, right? So if you play a first turn Llanowar Elf and a second turn the First Iroan Games, you now have 2 different 1/1s that you can potentially put the 3+1/+1 counters on already, which means that it's more difficult. It's bad for you if you have only the 1/1 and the opponent removes your only creature, so you miss out on Chapter 2 and potentially miss out on Chapter 3, right? So, just being able to accelerate out a 3 on turn 2, it's good. That's one of the reasons why people play Llanowar Elves anyway. But now you're spreading out the potential impact of Chapters 2 and 3 across multiple creatures. And the reason I was thinking about this is that's a format where one of the most common counterspells is Censor. So even if, it's just not good in general. You just have this random Lotus Petal lying around and your deck is just a legit deck otherwise. You just have this Censor Insurance. And I think that's kind of cool.
It's definitely fun. Yeah, no, this card looks incredible, right?
Yeah.
I think this is
really
a top 10
good.
card. Really good.
I mean, just to differentiate versus Throne of Eldraine, a lot of these cards are exciting and seem powerful to me, but not crazy format warping like
Heliod and Underworld Breach.
Well, I mean, Heliod I think might be a mistake. Yeah, that one's not, but that one's different. Oko is just general nuisance in every format that it was once legal in, right?
Well,
Heliod's
that's
not
just
like that.
it's not,
Heliod is a specific
I would not
nuisance.
describe Oko as a general nuisance. A nuisance? It's a nuisance like a nuclear bomb is a nuisance.
Yeah, Heliod's not like that. Heliod is a specific problem that might plague specific formats. Probably. I think this is almost certainly going to be a problem relative to the current power level of Pioneer, right? But
it'll be interesting.
It's just appearing in places. It's I knew you had a turn 2 kill deck, but what if you just added a 3-mana Planeswalker that takes many turns to generate an advantage? Oh, wow, my turn 2 kill deck would love to add that. What if you added it to your mono red deck? We'll try it. People.
I mean, it just goes to show. It just goes to show when you make something undercosted, then sometimes it'll show up more. So, are there any commons that jump out at you? What's your favorite common in this set?
Favorite common? I hadn't thought about things specifically based on commonality yet.
Yeah, I love it. So here's some
I have
cool
a lot
options.
Of uncommons I'm cool with, but uncommons.
So here's a few cards I could imagine you having some feelings about.
Yeah.
First, Sentinel's Eyes, white for a +1/+1 and vigilance aura, and it has escape. You can pay white and exile 2 cards from your graveyard.
Oh, so that's a solid little engine by itself, and it's cheap.
This is a really powerful Rancor insofar as it's less bursty. I mean, obviously Vigilance is a lot less explosive than Trample, and +1/+1 is less explosive than +2/+0. But people could fizzle your Rancor. Sentinel's Eyes is not fizzleable. Right? This is a much more dependable Rancor, and it's cheap. I mean, that the Tom Ross special back in the day for 1 mana, people were playing that, and that one costs a lot more to get back, right?
Oh, the one with the goose on it or whatever. I can't remember the name of it. Not Always Watching.
Pay 4?
Yeah.
And this one, you're only paying 1?
I think that also contextually, there's a lot of value to this. One, coming from the graveyard versus being an actual card that you're utilizing out of your hand. This is a good, it's a good catalyst card if you have to do something before doing something else, only costing 1, and it also gives you an enchantment, which you might want, and it also gives you a white pip, which there are many reasons you might want.
I have to imagine that there's going to be plenty of decks where you're going to be like, man, I would freaking love to put my +1/+1 and Vigilance in Aura on my card that makes me draw a card every time I play an enchantment.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It seems to me like there's going to be some kind of an enchantment-based deck that has some self-mill aspects that just starts going off. Because when Sentinel's Eyes draws you a card, the probability that you're going to be able to have cards to get Sentinel's Eyes back at every point, I think this card looks really good.
What if I discard Sentinel's Eyes to my Dream Trawler to give it hexproof and then buy it back, and now my Dream Trawler is so sick?
I guess.
Until I need to give it hexproof again.
I guess. A little fancy. Another common of interest. What do you think of Relentless Pursuit? 2 and a green. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a creature card and or a land card from them into your hand and put the rest in your graveyard.
That's a little expensive, yeah?
Yeah, I'm not into it. I just wanted to say...
It's like... if it were both, I'd be like super... I mean, I played that card, Gifted the Gargantuan.
No, it's both.
You put a creature card and... Oh, it's and or.
Right.
Oh. Now I love it. It's so...
Well, I thought it might trick you. I don't know. It's fine. It's going to be fun to play with in Limited, but I don't think it's good enough for Standard.
I mean, if Standard's real grindy, like grindy and fair, like there's grindy and fair and grindy and unfair, right? If it's grindy and fair, this card's probably pretty good. If it's grindy and unfair, somebody's just working.
No, I don't think it's going to be pretty good. Look at what the bar is. Compare this to Thirst for Meaning.
Well, Thirst for Meaning is fast and this card is slow.
Yeah, but Thirst for Meaning is also way, way stronger.
Yeah. Like this card only gets certain kinds of cards and sometimes only gives you one. Thirst for Meaning always gives you lots, and it's just a question of how much you had to pay for them.
Thirst for Meaning to me seems like this is a card that you describe as good.
Yeah.
Whereas, and Thirst for Meaning also, in particular, is really interesting when you look at things like Banishing Light. You know how there's all those different enchantments where, like blue-white decks or whatever can try to solve their problems with some enchantments, whether they hit everything or a subset or even just small things. Like, hey, this is my enchantment that can hit things that cost 3 or less or whatever. Thirst for Meaning is like a fantastical way to make it so that if you're playing against somebody aggressive, you can buy yourself time with all those enchantments. But if you're playing against a control deck or some kind of combo deck or some kind of weird thing, you can discard them with upside because instead of having to discard 2 cards, you're actually only discarding the 1 enchantment.
Sure.
A draw 3, discard 1 is like... That's like so good for 3.
Yeah. I mean, probably not good enough together, right? But if you had cards like Sentinel's Eyes, which is an enchantment that essentially you can buy back for free out of the graveyard.
I don't think it's a 0. You're right. They're not strategically aligned well, but I don't think it's like completely 0 that those 2 cards could show up in a Standard deck together.
It would be an odd situation, but it could happen.
Another common does I mean, I guess we already talked about the -3/-3, but
I'm into the -3/-3.
Sure. What about 0/5 Flash Defender, the turtle?
How much does that cost?
1 in a blue.
Riptide Turtle Flash. Yeah. I guess it's all right. It's okay.
You don't think you get enough mileage out of the Flash?
I mean, I think you certainly get some mileage out of the Flash. Like if your opponent's committing pre-combat to something, you can steal a little value with it, which is cool. It's fine. I mean, like it's best positioned in a deck probably like along the lines of a blue-red deck where the 5 toughness can be synergistic with, a card that deals a specific amount of damage less than 5 to multiple creatures, right? So I think that it might have something there, right? So you kind of force the opponent to play multiple things to just get through the turtle, and then you wrath them with some kind of Deafening Clarion type card that gets all their things that are tiny and then leaves the turtle. I think it's certainly okay.
Yeah, I think it's only okay. What about Glimpse of Freedom? The new Think Twice.
Is that the think thrice? Yeah. So
As much as you want.
yeah. So
Think as much as you want.
Glimpse of Freedom, 1 in a U for an instant draw card as escape of 2 in a U. Exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. I'm into this card. I think it's pretty good. I don't know how many you can
You think
play.
this card's pretty good?
Yeah, I like it.
I'm not saying I don't like it. But man, isn't this card like, whew, this is like you have to work so hard just to get up to Think Twice. And it's not like Think Twice is anywhere close to as good as Thirst for Meaning.
Well,
you don't get the third card until you've spent 8 mana and exiled 10 cards.
okay, wait, let's pause for a second. Where would you rate Thirst for Meaning versus Compulsive Research? Thirst for Meaning is better, right?
Thirst for Meaning is versus Compulsive Research?
Compulsive Research, yeah.
So Compulsive Research is more dependable and robust and could go for everybody because it discards lands. However, I think that the instant, like once you're the person who's decided to actually play with this, even if more people could use Compulsive Research, Thirst for Meaning has a stronger impact on the game. Being an instant is just such a big upside.
I just go back and remember I deliberately played Compulsive Research instead of Think Twice when I thought Think Twice was the bee's knees, but I think Mark Herberholtz convinced me to play Compulsive Research instead, and I think that was right. Glimpse of Freedom. I could totally see playing some number of copies of this card. Like, there's like Pioneer decks and Modern decks that play like one Think Twice. I think like one Glimpse of Freedom is probably better than one Think Twice, and those
I don't
play those. No,
I don't.
One Think Twice better.
No, because what percentage of the time are you going to have 3 mana and not be able to flash this back because you don't have 5 cards you can afford to pitch without it messing up your Snapcaster Mage or whatever else you're doing? To say nothing of the possibility of you sideboarding in Rest in Peace or something.
Oh yeah,
right?
That's medium. That's very common in like the first 10 turns of the game, probably.
But then, like, you don't even get your money compared to Think Twice until you've exiled 10 cards.
10 other cards.
Right. That's
implication of at least 11 cards.
I think you're crazy. I don't think this card's that good. I think it's not like you couldn't play one of these in some deck or whatever. Like, I'm sure if Shaheen plays it sometime in some Esper deck as a one-of, fine. But, like, I don't think this is where I would recommend starting. I just think it's not reliable enough.
There's just so many other good Canterbury stuff right now, right? There's Opts. And especially if you're going to play in Pioneer and you're going to play those kind of cards, I think I like cycling cards better than random card drawing spells because they're harder to stop.
And for 1 instead of 2.
Yeah. All right, you convinced me. This card is not very good.
How about Satyr's Cunning? It's the red for a sorcery, make a 1/1 that can't block, and you can escape for 2 in a red, exile 2 other cards from your graveyard.
I don't know. Like, is this a sideboard card?
No,
it's grindy, right?
Well, sort of. I don't know. I think you got to imagine. Like, okay, first of all, let's suppose that you had Satyr incentives, right? Because you're actually playing Gallia of the Endless Dance.
Well, that card's sweet. Yeah.
Gallia of the Endless Dance is like a Satyr Lord anyway, so like a recurring token-making threat. That's where I would play Satyr's Cunning, is in a deck that was like, hey, I can actually afford I want another 1-drop for my Gallia of the Endless Dance deck.
Yeah, I actually think this card's probably pretty good.
Pretty good? Wow, okay.
I changed my mind on it. Like, first of all, I actually like it in decks that just put a bunch of stuff in the graveyard, so that can include decks with burn cards. That can include, if you're getting in combat and losing creatures. Just like red decks have historically just been able to win with cards that were, I think, a little bit less powerful just because there were lots of them, and sometimes because they're cheap. And I think Satyr's Cunning kind of fits that mold, right? Like a 1/1 for R is in the abstract not very good, but if you're playing a deck that can
particularly when it can't block.
Yeah, but if you're playing a deck that just puts a lot of things in the graveyard, right? Like whether it's lands because you're sacrificing them for one reason or another, or like it's small creatures are dying in combat, or you have burn cards or the removal cards that are just going to the graveyard. I think like it's just cheap and it's just an annoying amount of threats. I think that there's some value that you have this because it balances out your ability to ensure that you have one drops in game one. And then I actually think this is just like an annoying source of damage and card advantage going long in some matchups, potentially even as a sideboard card. Like, and it's actually, depending on the kind of format you're in, if you have stuff like Convokes or something, it's just bodies.
Yeah.
Like I think
It
I
helps you
think
get
it's
up to
okay.
3 or more for your Gallia too. The 3 or more part, because it can produce multiple bodies.
So just backing out kind of on the commons thought, the card that you were making fun of earlier, that
Making fun
yeah,
of.
the
Oh,
Omen of the Forge, which is a
I wasn't making fun of it. You were.
I guess you had a good faith thought that I might like this card. So
Yeah. I do you think I don't like this card?
uh, Omen of the Forge is 1 and an R for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, it does 2 damage to any target, which is a little expensive for that effect. We typically
It's just
play
still an instant. It's only 1 mana more than shock.
we only one, yeah. For this ability, so it is kind of magma jetish if you had to pay an additional 3 mana for for magma jet.
No, but that's only if you wanted to use it immediately. That's not what it's about. You're paying a mana more than shock,
Yeah.
but you're getting a. Not only are you getting a devotion, which admittedly devotion to red's not that good right now, but you have enchantment synergies, man. Like if you have anything that bounces the enchantment back to your hand, or gets enchantments out of your graveyard, or wants enchantments out of your deck, I don't know. You don't think this card's going to show up?
I think it could, in the same sense. You remember, like, was it Oath of Chandra? This card seems like on power level to Oath of Chandra to me, maybe a little worse than Oath of Chandra. Oath of Chandra saw some play.
If it, yeah, I mean, the fact that it's fast. Omen of the Sea, by the way, as far as these omens go,
Yeah.
Omen of the Sea is the think twice you should be looking at, man. 1 in a blue when it enters the battlefield. It's a flash enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2, then draw a card. So you do get it the good way, and then it's 2 in a blue sack, obviously to scry 2, which you can do later, much later, when you're about to be out of gas or whatever. But like, it's it's 2 mana preordained but fast. And then it also has the upside of the late game scry 2, and devotion to blue is actually good.
Yeah. So let's just talk about all the omens for a sec. I can imagine playing most of the omens, whether or not I think they're that good. I think that your question was apt. Do I imagine seeing Omen of the Forge see play? I think it will see. I think it's going to be weird if and when or where it sees play, but I can imagine it seeing play. On a costing basis, I'm actually most positively predisposed to Omen of the Dead, which is, I think, weird because I don't know the last time I ever played like a raised dead ability, right? So
It's an illusion.
it's a B for same model flash enchantment. When Omen of the Dead enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and then it has that same clause, 2 and a B. Sacrifice the Omen of the Dead, scry 2. You think this card is unplayable?
No, I just don't think to describe this as the best of the 5.
I don't know if it's the best. I feel like Omen of the Forge, if you rate it against Shock, it costs 1 more. Omen of the Hunt, if you rate it against Rampant Growth, it costs 1 more. Omen of the Sea, if you rate it against Preordain, it costs 1 more, but we're talking about Preordain. Omen of the Dead, it's the one that's costed. It's costed like near the casting cost of the original.
No, okay. So you're saying that you think that preordain, shock, rampant growth, and raised dead are all about the same power level?
No, Raised Dead's not a playable card. The other 3 are all sweet.
Right.
Like, obviously,
So
Rampant Growth defines every format that Rampant Growth is legal in.
how good would 0 mana sorcery raised dead be?
0 mana sorcery Raised Dead.
Would that be better or worse than preordained?
I think worse.
Totally worse, of course. This card costs a mana more than that card.
All right.
I mean, maybe it's fine because you want the Black Devotion. Like, it could be sweet that you're like, oh, I get back my Grey Merchant. I've got even more devotion. Maybe, but it doesn't look that good to me, man. It looks like just a freaking another one of these bog, hollow, whatever. Omen of the Sea is the truth, and Omen of the Hunt is the truth. Omen of the Sun, it's a cool card.
Let's talk
I
about
don't think it's really fun.
Omen of the Hunt for a second. So, Omen of the Hunt is 2 and a G flash. When Omen of the Hunt enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library, and it has that same thing to sacrifice and scry. You think this card is the truth? That's how you would describe this one?
Totally.
Yeah?
Totally.
3 casting cost rampant growths have had pretty spotty performance in Standard in the past. But you think you're getting that much from the devotion?
How about this? 3 cost rampant growths have had phenomenal success recently. Dude, if you're playing if you're playing some sort of deck that cares about the Beanstalk Giant or that cares about if you're playing some kind of blue-green, any kind of a ramp deck, I'm not saying this one's definitely going to be by head and shoulders better than a bunch of the other ones, but it has enchantment synergies too, which are often people who would be in the market for a rampant growth. The fact that it's an instant too is actually quite good. But the big thing here is just that, okay, you remember how it was actually deceptively strong that you could use Once Upon a Time in order to find your Beanstalk Giant or whatever?
Sure.
There's going to be some kind of decks that use some kind of cards that are going to care about enchantments, and then it's going to be like, wow, I can use my rampant growth counts as an enchantment. This is so good for me.
You know what? I'm turning around on this only because, like, let's say you're playing this in, like, I don't know, like a blue-green deck or something. It's turn 3, you just have your mana open, they don't do anything, and then you cast your rampant growth at the end of their turn. All of a sudden, you're, like, ready to spring on 5. Or maybe it's even better, like, later in the game, and actually, it's great if you spring on 5 because you just, like, nail your Nissa, untap, and have, your breeding pool open or whatever on that turn. That actually seems pretty great to me.
Sure. I think you're also going to find that some of these are going to give you gas later in a way where your ability to sack it and scry 2, it sounds modest, but once you're at a spot where if you flood out a little bit, its ability to help dig you to some more action.
Oh, yeah. Especially these decks all have like 26 land, right?
Here's another.
That's great.
Good.
Nuts.
So what's like, I think on the average, draw a card is definitely better than scry 2. But I think on the average that scry 2 is at least in the ballpark of draw a card and discard a card. And I think that if you were to, when you look at this sacrifice mode as being able to draw you an extra half a card, it's like that Omen of the Sea. It's not just that you're getting a preordain, you're also getting an extra half a card later, and it actually front loads most of the power instead of splitting it up like Think Twice does.
I think that there's a pretty cool implication to these cards, which is like these cards are either good at, kind of catching you up like Omen of the Forge or getting you where you want to be with like Omen of the Sea or Omen of the Hunt. But then there's kind of like an implication that you're playing a game where you're kind of smashing your cards against their cards. And then now you're like at kind of parity, but then you have this scry 2, and that's the thing that's going to push you over the top.
Yeah. I mean, your opponent, it's not like you're forcing them to lose to you, but they are going to lose to you because of the implication.
Yeah. So what do you think about Omen of the Sun? I think this one's okay. This one's solid to me.
Sure.
Yeah, but wouldn't you pay?
I don't know.
3 mana?
Nope.
You wouldn't pay 3 mana for 2 1/1 guys and gain 2 life?
Nope. No, I would not.
I don't know. Midnight
I would pay
Haunting,
2 mana. Yeah, the Midnight Haunting. 1, they flew. 2, I wouldn't play with Midnight Haunting.
I mean, Midnight Haunting was not in the best version of that deck. It was in a version of that deck.
I just think you're going to find the difference between stuff that costs Like the token makers, the extra mana, it does matter. This card could be fine. I think if it's fine, it's definitely because of the enchantment synergies, and that's what I think is going on with all of these. Is that if they're good, it's the enchantment synergies, with the exception of Omen of the Sea, which just looks good to me.
Omen of the Sun seems like a good grinding card to me. Like if you're playing against decks that try to convert cards into damage, like this absorbs attackers and gains life. It's horrible for some people.
Maybe. I guess if people are playing with stuff like attackers that just die to 1/1s.
But they do. People have always they play 2/1s for one. Every 2/1 for one, people are like, oh yeah, I'm playing that. I love it. I love attacking.
I don't know. Like I just don't think that's like for instance, here's an alternative low rarity card you can spend 3 mana on. You get it's Illyrios Enraptured, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 that enters the battlefield tapped. It doesn't untap during your untap step if you control a reflection. And when Illyrios enters the battlefield, create a 3/2 blue reflection creature token.
So this is like what 5/5 over 2 bodies for 3 mana.
Yeah, but you don't get the second body until the first body goes away, unless you've got combos.
Yeah, this card seems all right to me.
You want to blink this with Thassa, maybe?
Oh, that's not bad.
No, that's not bad at all.
No.
What if your opponent plays with Edicts?
That's very good. I mean,
what if you just have any way to untap your guy?
What if your opponent just has like 2 3s and 3 2s and 2 2s like a lot of people have? You just cast Illyrios, trade the first one, trade the second one. They're down a card. It's okay. It's solid.
Yeah, this card looks pretty good.
Yeah, this card is troublesome for some of the kinds of decks that I've historically liked. But I also think that like Omen of the Sun is troublesome for the same reasons. Like, Illyrios is probably a little better.
Okay, as far as the burn stuff goes, I know they've made some of these cards before, and you've never really been swayed by them, but maybe this one's the one. What do you think of the black? Target player loses 2 life, and then you can escape it for 3 mana, or for 4 by Fruit of Tizirus. So it's black sorcery. Target player loses 2 life, and you can escape it for 3 and a black and exile 3 other cards from your graveyard.
That card seems like it would be a very... So what's the escape cost? 3 total?
3 and a black.
It's a little expensive.
It's too expensive, man.
I mean, like, I'm just trying to compare this to Bump in my head. So this doesn't seem like an obviously good standard card to me. Bump is a great modern card, but 3 and 2
great.
Are
I would not describe it as a great modern card.
Always
great.
Happy to have a Bump in my deck. I mean, I stopped playing Black.
You don't play Bump in your 27th best archetype.
No, I stopped playing Second Colors.
Oh my god!
But I was playing Bump like a year ago. I liked it. This card is, I don't think it's good enough.
Yeah,
I think it's tough to beat for some people, right? But I think like if you're gonna get in that zone where people are losing to a Fruit of Tizirus, they're probably would lose to something better than this also.
So does we talked about it briefly, but does a Treatise Oracle of Half-Truths do it for you?
Oh my god. This is one of the top 10 cards I like the best also. I would love to talk about this card. So this guy is... I can't 100% kind of like wrap my head around playing on either side of a Treatise Oracle of Half-Truths until like I see people play with it or I play with it myself. But it's so like fact or fiction-y, right? Like it's 4 mana and then you have this fact or fiction-y thing kind of happen, but it's always a little bit better than that because you always get like 1 or 2 more cards. Like one of them is just like a 3/2 menace and the other one is just like the Black Lotus that casts it for you. I like this card a lot. It seems very exciting to me, right? Like, when do you put 2 cards face up? When do you put 1 card face up? Why would you do that? Why do you split your piles in a certain way? You know, these are all questions that I can't wait to try to start answering, but I think that I need to have some specific context.
So I think that you make your opponent split where you're going to get either 2 or 1, and it's your choice. But they control the piles and the information.
Yeah.
Do you think it's fair to describe that as ballpark a card and a half?
Ballpark, like, sure. Yeah.
So there's 3 cards. You're going to get 1 or 2 of them. You can decide if you get 2 every time. But, like, your opponent is getting to put the best one on the average with the pile of 1. And if all that was happening was your opponent was splitting the piles and you got to choose, of course it's worth more than 1 card, right? Or more than 1.5 because you're choosing the better pile. However, your opponent gets to control the information so that it rounds back down a bit because you're only getting to see one of the face-up piles, you know? So to me, it seems like this is like roughly, call it 1.5 cards. A 3/2 menace that lets you draw 1.5 cards, that's a pretty exciting 4-drop.
Yeah, so here's the thing. If you're playing...
I mean, that's kind of like the 2/3 flyer, right? That draws you a card and gains you some life?
No. That's not an exciting card. This is an exciting card.
They're the same!
I hear what you're saying. Hear me out on this one. Like, imagine, so if you're playing a Tretis in a deck that has, like, a lot of point removal, right? Cheap point removal. You're going to get those kind of cards a lot because those are the cards that you're playing with. It's actually going to be difficult to block it because it has menace, right? So it's actually a pretty...
Unlike flying, which is easy to block.
All right, so when compared to not elite guard mage, right? So here's the thing about this card. This card can create disasters. Like, imagine, I'm just going to use a card as an example, obviously just extrapolate the meaning of this. Like, what if you turned over 3 lightning bolts with the Tretis? Like, it's just like fact or fiction in that way. So
what if you were low on life and then you gained 2 life and now your opponent can't kill you?
Well, it's 3 life. That card gains 3 life, not 2.
That's even better.
Yeah, so if you turn over 3 lightning bolts, right? Like, do you put 2 of the lightning bolts face up under the hopes that they think that there's something even better in the 1 card pile? Maybe I'm just...
You're not describing something that suggests this card is better. You're describing anticipating having fun playing with and against this card.
Yeah, I think that as I talked about it out loud, I realized that's what I was saying.
And I'm not saying that...
Great!
Look, Elite Guard Mage is a good card. There's nothing wrong with the Elite Guard Mage quality of card. I think this is totally good. This is a good card. I just think it's important to note that how much glee you might have when you fantasize about it, that doesn't mean the same as the power level, you know?
Yeah, I mean, when you put it that way, like, I guess drawing a card and gaining 3 life, that's... Each of those things is basically worth a card, which leads me to believe that Elite Guard Mage might just be better than Tretis.
Well, yeah, Elite Guard Mage probably is a little bit better than this card.
Because the decks I can imagine...
That is true. It probably is a little bit better.
Playing either of these cards might rather have a 2/3 than a 3/2, right? Like, the 3rd toughness instead of the 3rd power is often valuable. Of course,
flying is better than menace.
Man. Now I'm going to have to take that top however many favorite cards.
No, it's fine. It's a good card.
Off the
Besides,
list.
You can like a card that's good, but not unreal. That's okay, man. Don't be ashamed of it. Lean into it.
Well, I like Dream Trawler the best, and that one I'm confident thinking that one's pretty good.
I think Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath looks like an unwise card to make. I think that card is going to prove problematic. Maybe it's nostalgia, but I really do think that, to me, the card I'm most excited to play in this set is a Bronze Hide Lion.
I mean, this card also seems fantastic to me. I can imagine playing all 3 of those cards in the same deck. Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath, Bronze Hide Lion, and Dream Trawler, maybe alongside our old friend, the Hero. Do you think that's a tickle your fancy at all? Scratch any itches?
I'm just gonna put the cards together, see which ones have the good rate.
I think that they all 3 of those cards have a pretty good rate, And when combined with the ability to just make free 1/1s, all their rates get a little bit better.
Nice. Yeah. Yep, we'll see. I can see it, but I think Hero of Precinct 1 and Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath is not necessarily an organic fit. But I see where you're going. All right, awesome, dude. I with the set fully out and ready to kick off, I'm ready for the reset for Standard. You know?
I think I'm going to play
Look forward to talking to you next week.
some sort of limited events this weekend. Maybe gear up for the Pro Tour, too.
Sick. Dude, this means I get to top 8. You're actually going to be there.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Maybe someday I'll take it.
In life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, so jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way